YouTube? Welcome to Fred's Full Throttle. I'm finally back home for a while and I have a lot to share with you. For those of you who haven't been following along, last week I went on a trip down to the Porsche Experience Center in Atlanta, also known as PEC, and rented two Porsche 911s and drove them back to back. I drove a 992 Turbo S and then a 992 GT3, arguably two of the best cars that they make. This week I'm going to share with you a full overview of what the experience at PEC is like and talk to you about some tips if you decide to go for yourself. Then in the coming weeks, interspersed with my other videos about Corvettes, I'm going to be doing some deeper videos about each car, how they compare to each other, and then how do they compare to the C7 Grand Sport. There are a few things that really surprised me, which I look forward to sharing. Lastly, I'll share my current thoughts on the C8 Z06 versus these cars, and if this changes anything in my future plans. Stay tuned, everything just got a whole lot more interesting. Now diving right in, I've been to PEC before, having rented a 991.2 GT3 back in 2019. This time I wanted to bring some of my friends, so I picked some of my friends who joined me at several other Gearhead events that I'd set up, and I invited them. My buddies Tim, Lenny, and Ian all said they were in, so a few months ago we booked everything, and this past week, off we went. Now PEC offers a wide variety of experiences, everything from an off-road obstacle course for their SUVs, to ripping laps in a Taycan Turbo S, to a young driver experience in the Cayman. There are back-to-back experiences so you can compare the cars, and there are extended hours courses if you really just want to savor all that you can of one specific car. Almost anything you can think up, you can do if you have the money to fund it. Now I mentioned that I decided to do the 911 Turbo S versus the 911 GT3. My friend Ian decided on a GT3. Tim went with a Carrera S. And Lenny decided to do a Turbo S as well. Now experiences do vary in cost, and all in my experience cost just under $1,250 for 90 minutes of time in the cars, about 45 minutes in each car. And I honestly think that's really reasonable for what you get. Now here are 3 quick inside tips if you decide to go to PEC. First, I recommend the damage waiver. It's only $50 and it takes your damage deductible for if you crash or damage one of the cars from $10,000 down to $2,000. Next, though you can sign up online, they have a dedicated staff coordinating events, and if you're going to bring more than a couple friends or family, I recommend calling. They make the entire experience much easier, and you can ensure that everyone will be on the track at the same time. Plus, you can reserve slightly ahead of the reservation blocks. They only let you book a couple months out online, but if you call, they have access to fit you into the schedule before it even opens up. They don't advertise that fact, but that's what we did. And lastly, and this is the big one, I suggest signing up for the earliest session of the day, 9 a.m. I'll talk about this more in a little bit, but if you get one takeaway from this entire video, sign up for the 9 a.m. session. So we booked all of us to be on the track at the same time, 9 a.m. And they suggest getting there about 30 minutes early so you can get checked in and kind of get ready. Well, through a twist of fate, mostly McDonald's that didn't allow dine-in, we ended up arriving even earlier, at around 7:30. The day before your event, each driver is going to get a QR code emailed to them, and this needs to be presented to the guard at the entrance to the facility. There's pretty significant fencing and everything around, but this code is what's going to let you in. Now here's why I told you that you want to show up early. Ideally, I'd recommend showing up at 8 a.m. for a 9 a.m. drive. We just happen to be a bit earlier than that. But the reason is because the facility is open and you can get in, and there's nobody there. Now when we showed up, only minimal staff were there. Most hadn't even arrived yet. And more importantly, we were the only car in the customer parking lot. This meant that we had free run to check out everything without any other people on our pictures, in our way, or somebody that we had to walk around. And we had nearly an hour to savor a selection of amazing cars without anybody else in the way. When we first walked in, there was a Cayman GT4 RS right in the main lobby, which was later removed and replaced with 2 other cars before any other guests got a chance to see it. Also, a little ahead of that first session, you actually get to hear Porsche warm up all the different cars for the day, and that doesn't happen after the first session because the cars are already warm. Now, about 30 minutes ahead of your session, you can go and check in with the event coordinator, sign a few waivers, and you're good to go. They hand you a driver's lanyard that you have to wear, and for your non-driving guests, they give you a spectator lanyard. Then they hand you a buzzer, which is going to summon you back at your slotted time. The facility itself is outright amazing. The buildings all look futuristic in all regards. Everything is glass, metal, or wood. The cars inside the building get shuffled often. There's a cafe, a restaurant called Restaurant 356, which overlooks the track, a simulator lab, a museum, a Porsche restoration garage, multiple underground garages, an entire trim and paint viewing area to see every possible PTS combination, and a covered outdoor viewing pavilion to watch the cars on the track. Now your spectators can grab some food, grab a drink, and go to that overlook and watch from an elevated position and see almost everything you do on the track. It's also a great opportunity for anyone with a long telephoto lens, as my wife Rachel did the last time I was there. Now before we knew it, our buzzer went off and we went back to the lobby. It was time to meet our instructors. Now we headed off into a presentation room with a map of the facility and got to meet each of our instructors. Their backgrounds ranged from former to current racing drivers to professional driving coaches for race teams to even a stunt driver. This job appears to be one you can't just apply for, but rather one that you need to be really well prepared for. Now during the presentation, they show you the whole track, and there's 5 separate courses, 6 if you count the off-road course. So there's a handling circuit, which is about a mile long and has 14 turns. This runs around the perimeter of the facility and has the highest speeds of all the different sections. Now next is a skid pad made of polished concrete, and then they have sprinklers spraying it down so you can really learn how to drift and learn car control, as well as they teach you about all the different traction modes in whatever car you've rented. Then there's a slalom course and a launch control strip. You can practice your balance in the car in between the cones on the slalom course, and you can learn how awesome and consistent the launch control is in any of the cars. I gotta say, launch control in the Turbo S is amazing. I think I did at least 10 launches because it was so fun. Now then, at the back of the facility, there's a low friction handling circuit. It's made of that same polished concrete from the skid pad, but this time without water, unless it's raining. It features a winding course that goes around some good elevation changes, and they teach you how to slide the car as well as how to use the traction control to stay in control of the car. Lastly is the infamous kick plate. This is a straight skid pad with a special plate you drive over just before you get to it. The skid pad itself is coated in a very slippery, low friction surface similar to Teflon, and then to make it even slicker, they spray it down with water. Then that special plate, it lets your front wheels pass over just fine, but then when the rear tires get there, it kicks you to the left or the right at random. Now the goal here is to simulate a skid at moderate speeds and to teach you how to quickly recover from it. It sounds easy, but it's a lot harder than it looks. The faster you go, the harder it is. 20 miles an hour is pretty recoverable after a few tries for most drivers. 30 miles an hour is nearly impossible. Now once they've given you that overview, they take you down the stairs from the pavilion and out to the cars. They're lined up like Skittles. All the different colors, and it's a really good time to get pictures of you with your friends and then take in a moment to admire all that exotic machinery that you're about to experience. Then they hand everybody a fancy bottle of Porsche water, and then you're off to whichever car you had rented. They take the time to walk you through the proper seating position, especially for performance driving, something I should probably do a video on at some point, and then they get the wheel adjusted correctly. Then they hop in with you and off you go. Now the general approach is that everyone in your session is going to head out to a different part of that facility. Early sessions tend to be less crowded, and up until nearly the end, I never had to wait behind more than about 1 or 2 cars for any of the sections. Now for the smaller features, they explain a bit more about how to approach it and talk you through what you're going to need to do. For the main circuit, they do 1 or 2 slower warm-up laps, really to gauge your ability, kind of see what you're working with, and then they work with you to ramp up your speed and improve your technique.
How secret would it be to take delivery of it?
Yes, please.
I love that.
This is not a place to come in and say that you know it all or say things like, I'm a great driver or I'm really fast. These are literally professional racing drivers, coaches, and experts, and are better than most of us are ever going to be at driving. All I can say is go in with an open mind and you'll come out learning all kinds of great tips about balance, handling, braking, acceleration, and so on. Though I've done a moderate amount of car control clinics, driver training, and even autocross, I learned as much in 90 minutes with these drivers as I've learned at any of those other events. One of those benefits of being with them for 90 minutes and having truly talented drivers at your disposal. I really recommend making the most of it. Now, one of the great parts of this whole experience is that after you've tried each of the different sections, they let you decide where you want to go and what you want to focus on. If you just want to do donuts and drifting for the majority of your time, then off to the skid pad you go. If you can't get enough of launch control, then head over there and set a personal best for G-forces or speed. If you like the challenge of the kick plate or the circuit, you can go and do those and hone your skills. It's really an experience all about making you a better driver and seeing what the cars have to offer. So I wanted to share some of my impressions from my time there. First and foremost, it is an absolute blast. It's as much fun as you can have for $1,000. Even more fun is bringing several of your friends and seeing the joy on everyone's faces when every expectation is blown out of the water. And I really mean that. The experience itself is a combination of so many different things: adrenaline and learning, speed and braking, the familiar and the new. While the instructors are there to make sure that you're safe and there to push you, they also want you to have fun, and everything has this kind of semi-relaxed feel so that you never feel like you're being pushed too far past your comfort zone. Next, the variety of experiences is fantastic, and without even asking for it, the instructors can tell when you're ready for something different, and they're going to change it up a bit. Or they'll take something that you learned in one place and apply it elsewhere. For example, my instructor Chris taught me a really good pointer for the slalom course of intentionally leaving about a foot of space between the edge of each cone and the car, which this has the effect of pushing your vision further out ahead. And so then we went over and applied it on the main circuit, and that really improved my times and the speed and flow that I had in driving. Next, while it might not sound like enough time, 90 minutes was pretty much the perfect amount of time to enjoy the cars. Certainly I could have gone longer, but with nearly a constant stream of adrenaline firing throughout the event, we all agreed that we were ready for a break when we had finished driving. There's certainly a bit of adrenaline by driving a car that's worth about as much as your house at high speed while working on late braking with guardrails all around. One of my friends had his Apple Watch on during the event, and throughout the event his heart rate was the equivalent of doing steady exercise. Later, while he was riding with his instructor, who happened to be the stunt driver, the experience was so intense that the watch actually showed significant spikes in his heart rate. Now, one quick tip to get the most out of your experience: before you head out on the track, but once you're in the car with your instructor, ask if they can drive for you for the last 5 to 7 minutes of your session. I assure you, no matter how good you are, how fast you think you're going, they're going to put you to shame and show you an entirely different level of driving, really, than most people will ever be able to comprehend. Seriously, you're going to thank me later. I'll wait. And lastly, the cars. Oh, the cars. These are the real stars of the show. The cars are brought to the track brand new with literally just delivery miles on the clock. They're broken in, serviced, and then they live out the rest of the year driving pretty hard. Now, a few really important things to mention. First, these aren't abused or beat to hell cars. They are in top mechanical condition and get all of the factory service that Porsche prescribes. Visually, the cars were immaculate. I didn't see one scratch, one ding, any scuffs anywhere in the interior or the exterior. For all intents and purposes, they are literally in showroom condition despite all the driving. And from a reliability standpoint, these cars outperform. The fact that only normal maintenance is needed blows my mind. My instructor said that Porsche uses the cars at these facilities to periodically check for wear and tear. They had a GT3 that went in for routine maintenance, and Porsche wanted to tear apart the PDK to check for any wear, damage, or signs of issues. Now, the computer in the car showed over 1,000 times that launch control had been activated since the last service, and the transmission was flawless. They couldn't find any indication in the transmission of the wear and load that the car had taken. They reassembled it, and the car was back out on track. Now, one other pretty cool aspect of the experience is that the instructors also talk you through all the different drive modes, settings, and they try them out with you. You can progressively go through the modes, relaxing and ultimately removing intrusions until you find which ones work best for you on each section of the course. Now, once we finished our experience, we headed back inside to go check out the museum. Porsche has a heritage and racing museum on site, and they apparently change the exhibits fairly often. This time, the exhibits focused around Porsche paint and the Paint to Sample program. They had iconic cars in a whole array of colors, as well as a bunch of information about the program, how it's evolved, major milestones, and other things in that realm. The cars in the displays are literally in factory showroom condition. Old air-cooled cars, modern hypercars, and everything in between. It was truly amazing. The museum is 2 levels, and it's one of the most thoughtfully put together exhibits I've ever seen in a car museum. You can tell that this company eats, breathes, and sleeps cars and motorsport, and everything that they touch is better for it. Now, lastly, if you've made it this far in what's surely going to be a long video, I wanted to let you in on a hidden gem in PEC. Something that isn't advertised, but ended up being one of the coolest moments from the entire day. And that's the employee garage. If you head out of the museum, which ends on a floor lower than the main lobby, you'll actually see some stairs that go up and some that go down. We decided to see what was lower, despite all the real kind of attractions being upstairs. It opens into what appears to be a large, if not particularly interesting, somewhat dimly lit parking garage. However, if you venture out into the garage, you'll notice that it is a treasure trove of amazing things hiding away. We found a pace car with over 100 signatures on it, every type of modern and prior 911, and the GT corner. In one corner of this massive garage, we found 9 or 10 992 GT3s all parked together. It turns out that the washing bay is on this level, and they bring the cars into the garage to dry and let them cool. There were even some GT4s mixed in just for good measure. But then we noticed a kind of peculiar looking 992 GT3. It looked sort of like the prior gen GT3 RS, but nope. It was a 992 in ultraviolet purple, a color that the 992 doesn't really come in. It has to be a PTS car or a one-off, and it looked amazing. Now, before you think all the excitement is over, we then found a stash of older 911s, almost all under covers, but waiting for restoration. You see, I didn't mention that one of the lower levels, Porsche operates a restoration shop where any Porsche that's 10 years or older can be restored back to factory condition for a price. More on this in a minute. Now, lest you think we were done, there's actually a second underground garage under the first one. Going back to the stairs, now head further down to the bottom. Before you even leave the stairwell though, we turned and we looked and we saw what was next to us. What is it? Some kind of rolling jig with what looks like a piece of a chassis on it. Lots of carbon fiber, some carbon ceramic brakes. Looked pretty exotic. Some sort of damage around the A-pillar. Wait a minute. Porsche has only made 2 real production cars with a removable roof and a full carbon tub. Could it be? Yes. The wheel hub tells the story. This is a Carrera GT tub that had been cut open. We actually got to see the inside of the structure, which looked like a honeycomb. Really cool stuff, and neat to see something so unique, rare, and expensive. I bet very few people can say that they've seen something like this in person. Now, you'll recall, we actually hadn't even left the stairwell of this second lower garage. So we did. We walked out into the garage, and it's equally large and equally mysterious. Lots of random Porsches are around, and the real highlight was what we dubbed the Taycan Garage. The whole back wall was full of Chargers, and a wide array of Taycans were there. Where else could you see so many of these cars in every possible spec, all just sitting there to look at? It was truly amazing. Now, I gotta say, from the back or maybe the rear 3/4 view, the Taycan looks awfully close to a new 911. What a fantastic looking car, and it's even better in person. Photos don't do it justice. Now, I know this is getting long, but here are the last few things that I think are worth mentioning. The restoration program and facility are expanding significantly, with a new dedicated building being built next door to increase their restoration volume. The program has been a hit, and they need a lot more space for all the requests they've gotten. Also, and way more exciting, they are building a brand new racetrack with a huge piece of land that they just purchased next door. It should be live about a year from now, so somewhere mid-2023 they said is the target, with a greatest hit set of turns. The carousel from the Nürburgring, a mirrored corkscrew from Laguna Seca, and several other of the most famous corners from the best tracks around the world, all on one track. They are also significantly expanding their facilities, and I can't wait to go back once that's done. Now, don't worry, I will be picking back up with Corvette content. However, over the next few weeks, I'm going to be mixing in some videos about the cars themselves at PEC, including my impression of the 992 GT3 and a comparison with the 991.2 GT3 that I drove, my 992 Turbo S impression, my comparison between the Turbo S and the GT3, and lastly, the C7 Grand Sport versus both cars, and an update on my future cars and my plans there. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, Fred out!